Thank you. This talk comes out of the meeting from the executive we had this past summer, talking about mercy and evangelization. And the question came up, is anybody involved in one of these street ministries that is the hard to reach people? And I was able to say truthfully, yes. I said, I have a ministry to homosexuals. And so they said, well, you give the talk. So here I am. I will do my best. I hope to dispel some confusion in this topic, because it seems within the church today there is lots of confusion about this topic. I start out by saying I am a licensed professional counselor. And my primary counseling ministry for the last 15 years has been working with homosexual men, or men with same-sex attraction. So I have counseled dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of men. So I come with some experience. Not that I know everything, but I'm still learning. If I talk more about men than women, it's not because I'm trying to slight women. It's because my experiences with the men. Let me start out by saying there is a difference between accompanying someone, a person with homosexual tendency or a homosexual, and the homosexual ideology. Two different, very, very different things. Homosexual ideology, we should fight that with everything we have. Homosexual people, we should try to accompany them to a place of healing and restoration. I want to start by talking briefly about the problem within our church right now on this issue. This is a very delicate topic, but one that must be faced head on. I consider it the postmodern heresy of today. Unlike the early church, which dealt with heresies about the nature of God, was Jesus divine? Was he human? The new heresy does not come against the nature of God directly, but indirectly by trying to redefine the nature of man. Man who was made in the image of God. If the evil one can convince us that male and female, made in God's image, as a mutual complement is no longer true, then our image of God is distorted, and all humanity is in danger of being redefined from the scriptural foundation as it's stated in Genesis. It is a fundamental anthropological change, a distortion of humanity, which is being proposed as an ideology that is being supported, financed, promoted by those who are powerful in the world and in many, many countries simultaneously. The church is the only institution in the world which has the courage to stand up to this ideology. The question is, will we, the church, mobilize and guide those caught up up in homosexuality into transformation? Or will we, the church, slumber as the vulnerable ones are conformed to an identity that only leads to false happiness with eternal consequences that end in spiritual death? These are, what I am about to share, are just little snippets or bites of things that are happening in the church right now, the Catholic Church. Some of our leaders are saying these things. Homosexuality is a natural variant of human sexuality. Homosexuality is biologically determined. A change in same-sex attraction is not possible. A separate gay spirituality is being encouraged, and some gay ministries tell us that a person who suffers from homosexual disorder has special gay gifts to bring into the church. We have reports of Catholic priests urging parents to celebrate the homosexuality of their children. One parish in the U.S. where they prepare same-sex couples for marriage. I could go on and on. I have examples. There are lots of them. Thus, a number of those in the Catholic Church act and say things that reflect the Church is no longer sure or certain if her Savior's blood can transform the same-sex struggle. Many leaders in the church are afraid to risk being seen as a hater or a bigot by naming homosexuality for what it is. A symptom of personal brokenness that can be healed through Christ and his healing community. The deafening silence by those in the pulpit on this topic is being heard. Silence is being heard and interpreted by the newest generation of churchgoers. The silence says to them, gay is okay. It's a legitimate way. There's nothing wrong with it. Even the best of our young people are confused, or worse, are defending homosexuality and same-sex marriage. And those caught up in a homosexual desire do not respond to this silence. They see silence as a complete approval of their lifestyle. Now, we know that the Catholic Church is very clear in its official teaching based on Scripture, tradition, and the Catholic Catechism. And I am not going to repeat all those things that we know already. But even when those in the church clearly enunciate her teachings on homosexuality, this is not enough. It is not enough for the Catholic Church to say that it's against homosexuality and gay marriage. That's a nice first step, but that's all. That will do nothing to help the problem. The church must assert gospel hope. What is the good news for those whose sexuality has been shaped by a broken culture? Can men and women find new hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Do we believe that Jesus can change these people's lives? The ministry of Jesus offers us numerous examples of compassion and mercy. He did not hesitate to be present to those whose lives were touched by sin. But he did not miss the opportunity to challenge them to rise above their sins because of his love. Mercy alone satisfies the cry of the misdirected heart. Jesus never offered false compassion. When Christians alter the truth of sin, we actually block the way for the homosexual to know mercy. Playing down the truth is not mercy. It is cruel. Cruel as death. So kindness without truth is false mercy. Jesus always offered true mercy, not false mercy. The church must become a refuge for the homosexual, a welcoming community that points to the cross. The church must serve justice to the oppressed through the power of God's mercy. There are countless thousands of men and women today who experience freedom from homosexuality because of the mercy of Jesus and the mercy that was shown them through his body, the church. I like to pray this prayer: Jesus, you have given mercy freely to me. Help me to give it away freely. Now, I am very passionate about this topic. It's a very personal topic for me because when I was an adolescent and into my 20s, I struggled with same-sex attraction personally. I was a very wounded person when I came to community life. And I still remember the day when I went to my pastoral mentor and told him I was having all these same-sex attraction feelings. I must be a homosexual. And he said, have you ever acted on these? I said, no, but they're there. What do I do? He said, don't worry, the Lord's got a plan. And I have to say, today, I'm such a changed person from 38 years ago when I walked into covenant community life. The love of God and the healing of the brothers and sisters, the unconditional love can do anything and change lives. So it was not my intention to have this ministry. In fact, at some point I felt called to go back to school and become a counselor because I was encountering so many married couples with marital problems. I thought I would go and become a marriage counselor. And in the process, it's a little too long a story to share, but I got into this ministry of working with men. And it's because of my own woundedness that I was able to reach out to them in the way and be effective. Now, I want to share some solutions, but I also want to share some facts that are, how does this originate? How do people get this? There is a propaganda lie that almost everybody has bought into, that this is biological. That there is a gene somewhere out there that causes this. I can only assure you the best science out there. There are studies out there that try to say this or try to twist it, but even the authors of these studies admit they prove nothing. There is not one shred of evidence yet that this is biological. Now, And I don't have to, I have all the studies written here, but I don't have time to go through them with you.
Could you make those list of those available to us?
Sure, I could do that. There was one that just came out like a month ago that was totally, it was laughable. But again, the media puts these in the paper or on TV, and everybody believes it. Oh, they found it. They found the gene. It's just not true. What is true is that there are scientific studies that are very good that show that, again, I'm talking about men here. I don't know about women. Studies show that 75% of men are born with, I call it, rough and tumble temperament. They're all boy. 25% of men are born with sensitive temperament. That means they get their feelings hurt very easily. This statistic corresponds with another study, very well documented study, that boys between ages of 10 and 12, 24% of boys between ages 10 and 12 experience some ambiguity, confusion about their gender. That would correspond with the 25% of boys who have a sensitive temperament. So if there is a biological component to homosexuality, it is that somebody with a sensitive temperament could be more predisposed to homosexuality. The fact is, about 2 to 4% of that 25% of men who have that sensitive temperament identify as homosexual or bisexual. So, even with a sensitive temperament doesn't mean automatically that you're going to be homosexual. Let me say, what is the essence of homosexual attraction? For a man, it's an inability to develop a healthy sense of masculinity within himself. He doesn't feel fully masculine. For a woman with this condition, she does not feel fully feminine. She feels somewhat masculine inside. For a male homosexual, they feel somewhat feminine inside. The binding predicament of the homosexual male is that he is unconsciously seeking to fulfill masculine identification with other men. Homosexual is someone who never fully identified with other men, feeling like he's one of the guys. Same with women. They don't fully identify with feeling feminine inside, or a woman. And so this process starts very early in life. There's still lots of interesting stuff going on, but they say between the ages of 18 months and 3 years is probably is a very critical time for identifying with boys, identifying with men, girls identifying with women. And what can happen if they don't identify with the same sex at an early age is they can develop what psychologists would call defensive detachment. What is defensive detachment? This is basically the inability of a child to identify with the gender of their same-sex parent. This can occur if the father is emotionally distant, or he comes across as a very angry person that you're afraid of. For the male child with a sensitive temperament, he may unconsciously defend himself, push away from that, not be able to identify with it. See it as something scary or hurtful, and he may reject it. And he may continue then to identify with the safe feminine. It is important to know that this has to do with the child's perception. The parent may or may not be that way. But if the child perceives the parent that way, that's all that matters. Another factor that can lead to the development of homosexuality for men is over-identification, obviously with the mother, an overbearing, overprotective mother, someone who forms excessive emotional bond with their child. For example, sharing all her feelings with her child instead of her husband. That's emotional incest. The child is not meant to experience that, but some boys do. Another significant factor, very, very significant, is once this process has started, it can be corrected if they can develop same-sex peer relationships, boys with other boys, girls with other girls. But already at this early age, the same-sex peer play and relationship starts to break down. Boys sometimes are afraid to play with other boys. They can't throw the ball as well as their friends. They get made fun of and they feel rejected. They become very often overly compliant and nice little boys who learn to stuff all their anger and assertiveness, and they become focused on making everybody happy. A typical homosexual man is a people pleaser. He bends over backwards to please people because he has lost his sense of assertiveness and has stuffed his anger. Of course, then sometimes you see homosexuals explode. Well, that's because they stuff their anger and it comes out. Often these boys become loners and focus all their spare time on the internet. Developing friendships with same-sex peers is incredibly important for normal gender development. Boys in groups have a unique power to masculinize each other. In a sports-oriented culture like ours, if a young boy is unable to throw, catch, dribble the ball, he is very likely to be excluded, isolated and ridiculed. This sports wound can cause him to foster his peer relationships with girls. So he will start spending most of his time hanging with girls. All the while craving inside, craving for male affection, to be able to identify with men. Once the hormones kick in adolescence, they begin to romanticize about experiencing, for a boy, their masculinity, or for a girl, her femininity. Looking at another person, for a boy, looking at another male body, or looking at male pornography, allows them to literally feel masculine inside in a way he cannot seem to feel on his own or inside himself. So pornography addiction for homosexuals, he's trying to feel, by viewing this, he's trying to take something into himself, feel that masculine, but because he doesn't feel it inside. He didn't know, he lost it. He didn't know, he never had it. He doesn't know how to get this sense of being masculine within. I wanted to say something about women in this, but there's so much, I could spend hours and hours and hours talking, so I have to skip through. I apologize for if I sound scattered. But one very important factor for men is that statistically they have found that 44% of men who identify as homosexual were abused in their childhood or adolescence. Sexually abused. 44%. So, if you have especially a vulnerable child who's maybe a little bit ambivalent, and they are perpetrated on by somebody else, and that feeling feels good, it's another guy, I feel close, feels good pleasurably, this is the diabolical nature of this. You can get hooked with one experience. And so sexual abuse of children is such a heinous thing. It's terrible. Now with women, same-sex attraction can develop in several ways, or a combination. The first would be similar to a young boy who doesn't identify with the father. In a girl's case, she may perceive her mother as very weak because she always gave in to the domineering father. The girl tells herself, I am not going to be weak like my mother. I will be like my father and my brothers and other boys. She becomes more aggressive and rejects her femininity. Like the adolescent male, when the hormones kick in, she begins to romanticize and eroticize what she feels is lacking in her femininity. And with some women, same-sex attraction can develop from some kind of early break in the relationship with their mother, perhaps due to sickness or long extended absence of the mother. This type of girl appears more feminine, but they develop a deep hunger for motherly love. Another scenario for women that can create this problem is divorce in the family, particularly when the mother makes her daughter her confidant. The young lady may feel no physical attraction to male youth because of her bitter memories toward her own father. Or she may be frightened by the way the father treated the mother or herself. So homosexuality within a woman can vary. Could be multiple causes, or they could be a combination of all these things. These are examples. Now I want to go back and take one line from the Catholic Catechism. This seems to upset a lot of people. It says, this inclination, which is objectively disordered, constitutes for most of them a trial. The phrase objectively disordered upsets people. Here I tread on a sensitive area because essentially the church is stating here that homosexual inclination is not normal. And it isn't. We weren't created this way. In fact, until 1973, the entire scientific community agreed that it was not normal. But then entered the homosexual agenda, and science gave way to being politicized. And now, quote, it is normal. The church continues to say, and needs to say, this is not normal. Doesn't mean you're bad, or horrible, or unloving, but it's not normal. I have pages I could give you statistics of all the other mental health disorders that accompany people with homosexual attraction. At the very least, I have never met a male homosexual who isn't overcome with anxiety, at the least. I could go on and on with many, many more serious mental health issues. And finally, before I talk about how to reach out to these people in mercy, I want to say one more thing. There are those who believe that if the culture was just more gay affirming, that these mental health statistics would decrease. One study done fairly recently in the Netherlands, published in the Archives of General Psychiatry, shows the fallacy of this. I think most of us would agree that the Netherlands, at least in the United States, we used to think of the Netherlands as the most gay-affirming country in the world. This study was done in the Netherlands, and it showed that the level of mental health issues with homosexual population is the same level of mental health issues as all the other countries out there that did not affirm homosexuality. So, affirming people in their homosexuality will not fix their mental health issues. Again, I speak as a therapist, as somebody who deals with mental health issues. So I'm not trying to gang up on homosexuality. I am somebody who's God has had mercy on, you know, and I love homosexuals. I have a deep love and compassion for them. I know what it's like to feel this way, to have these feelings. It's like if I thought that I had to live this way my whole life, just put a gun to my head now and do away with it. That's how it's a horrible affliction that they have to live with. The easy way out is to say, it's okay, let me live this way. But that's not Jesus Christ. That's not the freedom he's promising. He's promising freedom, resurrection power through the cross. Let me say that the enemy, he stokes shame and self-hatred. Most homosexuals feel a shame and self-hatred that none of us in this room have ever experienced. But as I said, change is possible. And the very first step we need to take is treating these men and women with respect, with compassion, with sensitivity and mercy. A very simple first step. Any jokes or humor against homosexuals needs to stop. If you're homosexual and you're in a crowd and you hear somebody making a snide remark, it's like a dagger in the heart. And if they hear somebody from the church say that, they'll never walk into that church again. We have to be people who clean up our speech and the way we talk about these people and not make fun of them. We cannot, nor can we help a homosexual by affirming their lifestyle in any way. The question of, should I go to my son's wedding, gay wedding, or my cousins or my friends? No, that's a no-brainer. You're affirming something that God has condemned. You can always show unconditional love to the person, but you don't affirm a lifestyle. We have to show our unconditional love to them and care as persons. People with homosexuality need the church. They need us to help them. They cannot, for the most part, overcome this on their own. Having a group of chaste friends, someone to be accountable to, is very, very important. There are very good organizations to link people to. Someone this morning mentioned Courage. Started in the 1980s in New York City under Cardinal Cook. Courage uses small groups with a priest to encourage chastity through development of a deep prayer life, strong friendships, frequent use of the sacraments of confession and Eucharist. I cannot recommend Courage enough. If your diocese, one way your community can serve the church is to help bring ministry for this population into the diocese, into the parish, into your church, into your community. If there is not a Courage chapter in your diocese, begin to pursue how to get one. Go to the bishop. I'm working on that right now in my diocese. Another organization, very, very helpful, NARTH, N-A-R-T-H. This is the National Association for Research and Therapy of Homosexuality. It's a scientific group of counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. And they have a wealth of information on this topic. You can go to their website, www.narth.com. I'm a member of that organization. I learned so much through the people who are laying their lives down. They, along with the church, are probably the number one reason that homosexuality hasn't completely swept the culture, because they're fighting the battle with true science. And it's made up of Catholics, Protestants, atheists are members of this organization. There are many excellent ecumenical interfaith ministries that provide small groups, excellent teaching and support material. I'm involved in several of these ministries and networks. As I said, if there isn't a ministry in your parish or your diocese, or for people who come to your community needing help, then try to see who you can contact to get something started. You don't have to know everything about this to at least get something started. Go to the right people. In my parish, we have had an open ministry for many, many years. On Monday nights, the pastor provides a space for a group to meet. As I said, people who struggle with this behavior are filled with much, much shame. Helping them open up to the love of God and experiencing a Father who loves them unconditionally is very important. Most of our communities are equipped with gifted, charismatic prayer ministry. People who can help those who want to remove some of the emotional and spiritual blocks that keep these people in bondage. So prayer ministry, inner healing, deliverance can be one of the tools. It's not the only tool, but one of the tools that helps remove some of the hurts that created the bondage that they're in. We need to use those ministries in our communities for this. Accompanying these people into a deep prayer life. Very important. At the same time, this is not a condition that you can just pray away. I cannot tell you how many men have come to me and told me how many nights they've cried themselves to sleep, begging God to take this away. He can help them, but very rarely does he wave a magic wand. These wounds take years to heal, and we must be able to find ways to accompany them so that they can get the healing. I have lots to say about the many, many things I do with my patient or my clients to help them. There's lots of very practical things that can be done. If you can find a Christian therapist who understands this issue, that is very, very helpful. But I know in many countries, if you try to help somebody with homosexuality, they will lock you up or take your license. Fortunately, in the United States, they're trying to do this. We're fighting. I know people who have lost their whole livelihood because of something like this. Giving somebody advice and then the person turning on them and making sure the state takes away their license. Also, many therapists, if your other therapists or counselors find out you are helping somebody, they will stop referring anybody to you. So they try to take away your livelihood. When I worked for the government, they tried to threaten me to fire me because they knew I did this on the side. So it's hard to find, but if you can find a Christian counselor, it's very helpful. For the men I meet with, for most of them, it's the first time they've ever opened up to another man and not been rejected. They're so afraid of rejection that they would rather live a gay lifestyle. They know it's wrong. Down deep, they know. But they would rather live that life than feel the horror of the rejection that they know they think you have for them. Rejection, loneliness, isolation, it's hell inside. And so rather than feel that pain every day, it's easier to live a lifestyle. So we have to do everything we can to reach out, to let them feel that we're not going to support the lifestyle, but we will be here for you. We will love you. We will love you unconditionally. I'm not going to talk much more. I'll just close because again, I could talk all day. One thing too, I forgot this. This is something our community has done. We've organized like an all-day conference for counselors and pastors to come into the city to inform them and set up, we'll set up a panel of people who have come out of the lifestyle. Let them give their personal testimonies. But anything you can do to help educate pastors and counselors is very helpful. I say in conclusion, as communities called to evangelize with the gospel of mercy, we must stand for truth in this hour because a whole generation is at stake. There are so many young people right now who are falling into this lifestyle because they're being encouraged into it. I could tell you so many terrible stories of young men that come to me who have one homosexual encounter and then end up with HIV. Or, it's sad. I pray, and so I pray and make known the truth as best I can, calling on Scripture, church teaching, and my own witness and service. And I say the church needs to be extremely careful not to subject herself to an utterly false mercy. We in the church must uphold the best for humanity and not alter God's design for the delusions of men. None of us can be self-righteous. We all carry within us our own brokenness and sin. And only the cross of Jesus Christ can save us in the homosexual population from ourselves and our disordered desires. May our communities become an expression of the gospel, compassionate and truthful, that has the power to welcome home the prodigal and to raise the sin-sick from the dead. Amen.